While you search for answers, your soul remains silent, not because it is absent, but because you never stop interrupting it. The spiritual search did not elevate you. It merely refined the ego's fear of being alone in silence with itself. At the exact moment you stop searching, everything you were begging to understand begins to reveal itself without words. When you stop searching, your soul answers every question. You wake up and the mind immediately starts running, hunting for answers, wanting to understand, control, secure. You call this a spiritual quest, but it is hunger for safety. You say you want the truth, but you only accept one that fits inside your fear. And what if I told you that this relentless search is exactly what keeps you empty? What in you needs answers so badly right now? What trembles when it doesn't know? Rumi pointed to this clearly. While you search outside, the soul is muffled. When you drop the chase, something greater speaks. This video did not arrive by chance. It came to rip away from you the ego's last elegant excuse. You think searching is a sign of depth. It is not. It is anxiety dressed up as wisdom. The real problem is not the lack of answers. It is the addiction to asking so you don't have to feel. Today you will see what changes when you stop. You will feel the silence that terrifies the ego and frees the soul. This is not comfort. It is raw truth. Rumi is the authority here because he did not teach the accumulation of ideas. He taught how to die to the search. If you can endure staying, something in you will shift now. You spend your entire life searching for meaning, for signs, for answers, for confirmation. The ego calls this a path. The soul calls it escape. While you search, you do not listen. While you ask, you do not stay. And what do you avoid by not staying? Emptiness. Silence. Now. The ego hates this because in silence it does not rule. It only survives when it is chasing something. Rumi was direct. Endless searching is not devotion. It is noise. You want answers because you are afraid to rest. You do not want the truth. You want anesthesia. And that leaves you tired, dry, always one step away from another question. Look at yourself now. When was the last time you stopped searching for an entire day? No new mantra, no new video, no new promise. The ego panics because it lives on the idea that something is still missing. It feels intelligent when it asks. It feels special when it searches. But inside it is ridiculous, spinning in circles, begging crumbs from the future. In Sufism, the problem is not knowing. The problem is not surrendering. Surrendering is not giving up on life. It is giving up control. It is stopping the strangling of existence, demanding that it confess something. Rumi did not collect answers. He burned the question. He saw that the soul speaks when the hunter sits down. The soul does not shout. It responds when you stop interrupting. Every time you run after another why, you push the answer farther away. The ego loves this because it never has to die. It always has a mission, always a next step, always a later. The soul exists only now, and now accepts no negotiation. Feel the discomfort. That is a good sign. The ego is being seen. It wants to understand this video. Agree, disagree, post a clever comment. The soul only wants you to stop for 1 second. Stop searching while you listen to this. See what happens in the body when you do not try to understand. That tightness? It is the ego losing its throne. It feels threatened because it realizes it is not necessary. In Sufism, this is clear. Truth is not found. It reveals itself when the hand lets go. You were taught that searching is a virtue. Rumi dismantles this without mercy. Searching can be just another form of delay. While you search, you do not love what is already here. While you ask, you do not trust. And without trust, there is no listening. The soul answers when you are naked of intention, when you want to gain nothing, when you do not want to arrive anywhere. The ego calls this a waste of time. The soul calls it return. Do something now, not tomorrow. Now. Stop looking for a beautiful sentence here. Stop looking for the next insight. Stay with the breath. Stay with the weight of the body. Stay with the silence between one sentence and another. If something answers inside you, do not celebrate. Do not explain. Do not tell anyone. The ego will try to steal it and turn it into a story. Do not let it. Rumi would say, what is true does not need to be displayed. And if you notice that nothing answered, excellent. That too is an answer. The ego wants fireworks. the soul speaks softly. It tests whether you can stay without a reward. The Sufi law of detachment does not promise quick answers. It promises truth when you stop demanding. The ego demands. The soul trusts. The ego asks when. The soul says here. The ego asks how. The soul says stay. Now observe, has the impulse to search returned? It always returns. The training is not to kill the impulse, it is not to obey it. Each time you do not obey, the soul gains space. Each time you chase, the ego becomes the owner again. This video teaches you nothing new. It removes the ground from the old, and that hurts. But that is how listening begins. If you stop now, what in you will try to pull you out of silence? And if you do not go with it this time, what else might reveal itself without effort, without search, without question? You still want to understand. Notice that. Even after everything, the mind tries to grab something, organize, conclude. That movement is the ego trying to survive. It cannot bear being without a task. In Sufism, this is seen as attachment to one's own thinking. You think thinking is living, but excessive thinking is escape. The soul does not need explanation to exist. It only asks for space. And space only appears when you stop looking for something to fill the void. The ego says, if I don't search, I fall behind. The soul responds in silence. There is nowhere to go. This collision hurts because it dismantles the narrative you built about yourself. You defined yourself as a seeker, as someone deep, as someone on the path. And what if that is just an elegant role to avoid surrender? The ego loves noble roles. It hides even in spirituality, especially there. Observe how you consume teachings, one after another, always one more, always the next key. This is not thirst for truth. It is fear of stopping. When you stop, you feel a void that cannot be explained, and everything that cannot be explained threatens the ego. In Sufism, this void is the real beginning. It is not absence. It is presence without form, but you were trained to fill, not to endure. The soul answers when you can endure not knowing, when you do not rush to close the wound with words. The ego closes everything quickly because it cannot stand bleeding. The soul lets it bleed until it cleans. That is why silence feels cruel at first. It removes your false supports. It exposes how much you depended on ideas to feel like someone. Without them, who are you now? Do you notice the haste? Even now, the urge to move on, to reach a conclusion. That is the ego asking for relief. It wants a happy ending, a clear lesson. The soul does not work like that. It reveals itself in layers when you do not force. Forcing is inner violence. In Sufism, the greatest violence is against oneself, when you do not respect the rhythm of the heart. Constant searching creates an identity, the one who seeks. That identity becomes a prison. You exist only while you are running. Stopping feels like death, and it is, death of the ego. That is why it screams. That is why it creates questions, doubts, analyses, anything to avoid being quiet, anything to avoid disappearing for a moment, but only when it disappears can something real speak. The soul does not answer with sentences. It answers with living clarity, a sense of fitting, a rest that does not depend on answers. You have felt this before, even if only for seconds, and then you ran to explain, to tell, to name it. In that moment, you lost it, because you turned presence into a story. The ego lives on stories. The soul lives on direct truth. Sufism does not ask you to stop living. It asks you to stop clinging to ideas, to expectations, to spiritual results. Even enlightenment can become attachment. The ego wants to get there to feel special. The soul does not want to get anywhere. It is already here. The one who needs to arrive is the ego, and it never arrives, because something is always missing. Feel how offensive this sounds. Good. The ego feels humiliated because it is being unmasked. It wanted to be the hero of the journey. Here it is the obstacle, and that hurts, but it also relieves, because maintaining this character is exhausting. The soul does not need to prove anything. It does not need to improve, it only needs not to be smothered. When you stop searching, the world does not end. What ends is the tension of having to know, of having to decide, of having to be something. The soul answers with simplicity, a right gesture, a just word, a necessary silence, nothing grand, nothing mystical, just right. The ego wants fireworks. The soul wants truth. You were taught to distrust the simple, to think the deep is complicated. Rumi dismantles this. The complicated is escape. The simple demands courage, demands presence, demands giving up the inner spectacle. That is why few remain. Not because they do not understand, but because they cannot endure it. They cling again to the search to avoid feeling the ground. Now see, every time you search, you project the answer into the future, and so you are never here. The soul only answers here, not later, not when you evolve more. Now. But now has no stage, no narrative, no merit, only truth. The ego gains nothing from this. That is why it resists. The training is not to stop forever. It is to notice when you are searching out of fear. Every time the impulse arises, see it. Do not fight, do not follow, just see. That space between impulse and action is where the soul begins to breathe. In Sufism, this is inner vigilance, not control, but attention. Attention changes everything without effort. Do you notice how the body responds when you do not run? There is a strange relaxation, almost guilt, as if you were doing something wrong by not searching. That is conditioning. You learned that rest is laziness, that silence is wasted time. Rumi shows the opposite. Silence is the only place where the real can touch you. The ego always asks, what do I gain from this? The soul does not negotiate. If you only stay when you gain something, you never truly stay. The soul's answer does not come as a reward. It comes as dissolution. Something in you falls away, a weight, an illusion, and that frightens you because you got used to carrying that weight as identity. Notice the difference between giving up and surrendering. Giving up is closing. Surrendering is opening. When you stop searching, you do not close life. You open space for it to act. The ego wants to act. The soul lets life act through it. That difference changes everything. One lives in effort, the other in flow. One shouts, the other whispers. Perhaps you are waiting for a big moment, an inner event. And if there is none, and if the answer is only this simple quietness, the ego rejects this. It wants something countable, shareable. The soul does not care. It reveals itself in the ordinary, in breathing, in looking, in not knowing. This is unbearable for one who lives on expectation. Now, honestly, what are you still searching for? Be specific. Name it inwardly. See how it creates tension. See how the body leans forward. Now release it for a moment. Do not solve it. Do not replace it with another search. Just release. This micro moment is the door. Do not run through it. Stand on the threshold. Notice something subtle now. When you do not search, time changes. It slows down, not because the clock stopped, but because urgency fell away. Urgency was the ego. It kept saying something was late, that you needed to run so you would not lose something. Lose what? When you stop, you see there was never anything to lose. There was only fear pushing you forward. The soul has no hurry because it does not live in lack. It lives in presence. The ego always convinced you that stopping is dangerous, that if you let go of control, everything collapses. Look at your own life. The more you tried to control, the more tense everything became. Tension does not come from life. It comes from trying to dominate it. In Sufism, this is clear. The hand that clenches cannot receive. While you search for answers, your hand is closed. When you stop, it opens. And what comes is not an idea, but clarity. You may feel a slight emptiness now, almost as if you have no ground. This is exactly where the ego usually flees. It changes subject, stimulus, focus. It prefers anything to this not knowing. But this not knowing is fertile. It is where the soul moves. You were not trained to trust this. You were trained to resolve, explain, conclude. Here, concluding is loss. Rumi pointed to this nameless place. He did not turn it into a system. He did not create a detailed map, because maps become crutches, and crutches weaken. The soul does not need a map. It recognizes the terrain. The ego needs a map because it is always lost, and it calls this loss spiritual search, so it does not have to admit its fear. Notice how the ego tries to feel special even here. It thinks this is deep, Few people understand. That is another trap. The soul does not feel special, it feels whole. Specialness is separation. Wholeness is unity. Whenever you feel above or below, the ego is active. The soul does not compare, it simply is. Stopping the search also reveals how much you fed on expectation. Expectation of improvement, of change, of enlightenment. Expectation is always future. The soul only responds now. When you live waiting, you never arrive. The ego promises, one more step and you'll get there. The soul answers, if you stop, you see you are already here. Sadness may arise, a calm sadness. Do not confuse it with depression. It is mourning. Mourning for the story you told about yourself, for the character who searched, struggled, wanted to arrive. That character falls when you stop, and falling hurts. But it is a clean pain, not suffering. Suffering is resistance. Clean pain passes, resistance prolongs. The ego tries to convince you that without searching you become empty, apathetic, without direction. Observe, when you do not search, there is still action. You still speak, walk, decide, but without the load, without the inner drama. Things become direct. This scares you because you were used to complicating things to feel alive. The soul is alive without effort. There comes a moment when you realize you do not need to expel the ego. It dissolves when it is not fed. Feeding is following. Following thoughts, impulses, urgencies. Stopping the search is stopping the feeding. Simple, brutal, no ritual, no secret technique. The ego hates this because there is nothing for it to do. It becomes useless. Now look honestly. How many times did you search for answers to avoid a simple decision? To avoid a necessary silence? To avoid feeling something uncomfortable? Searching was your favorite delay. Stopping the search puts you face to face with what is, without makeup, without excuse. That is why it is rare. It is not complex. It is too direct. The soul answers when you accept not being guided by fear, fear of being wrong, of losing, of not knowing. When fear does not lead, something deeper guides, not as a mystical voice, but as clear sense. You know what to do without explanation, and this makes the ego desperate because it loses control of the narrative. And now, as you feel all this, observe the next inner movement, the urge to close this moment, to turn it into understanding, to move on. Do not do it yet. Stay a little longer in this space without searching, not to achieve something, but to see what happens when you do not run. Because the answer that begins to arise here does not end in words. It continues to reveal itself as long as you sustain the simple act of not searching. And what else might emerge if you stay one more instant without escaping this? If you have reached this point, it is not because you understood everything. It is because something in you stopped, and that is already rare. Most flee before this point. The ego tries to close, conclude, say, I got the idea. Do not close. Do not conclude. Conclusion is its final trap. The soul does not ask for an ending. It asks for continuity of presence. If you feel a strange silence now, do not fill it. This silence is the answer beginning to form without words. This video did not give you something to carry. It removed weight. And the ego hates that because without weight, it has no function. If you try to turn this into a concept, you lose it. If you try to teach someone, you lose it. If you try to feel special for having stayed until here, you lose it. Just stay. And take this into your day. Every time the urgency to search arises, stop for 1 second. That second changes everything. If this confrontation truly touched you, write in the comments just one simple sentence without explaining anything. I stop searching. Not to convince anyone, to remember. And if you feel this kind of content is not for everyone, it is because it is not. That is why the channel has a members space. There, depth is not diluted, the ego is not spared, and silence is respected. Become a member if you feel you no longer want to accumulate, but to sustain. Now do not rush away to another stimulus. Stay alert to the next impulse. It will arise, it always does. The question is not whether it comes. The question is, will you obey? Or will you stop once again and see what answers when you do not search?